Welcome to the world of Sci-Fi Story. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe the channel. Enjoy the listening. Touch if you dare. Not everyone can handle this power. The human battleship Vanguard patrolled the outer reaches of the galaxy. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, bristling with advanced weaponry and state-of-the-art technology. Its sleek, imposing silhouette cut through the void, a testament to humanity's unyielding spirit and drive for exploration. Captain Laura Mitchell, a seasoned veteran of many space campaigns, stood on the bridge, her eyes scanning the holographic display that projected the surrounding star systems. The bridge was a hive of activity, with officers monitoring various readouts and maintaining communication with other ships in the fleet. Despite the routine nature of their patrol, there was a palpable tension in the air. The galaxy was a dangerous place and vigilance was always required. Captain, we're picking up a distress signal, reported Lieutenant Jackson, the communications officer. His voice broke the steady hum of the ship's operations, drawing everyone's attention. Source: Captain Mitchell asked, her tone sharp and focused. Unknown, ma'am. The signal is weak, but it appears to be coming from a nearby sector. It's not one of ours. On screen, she ordered. The main display flickered and a garbled message appeared, accompanied by a series of alien symbols. The ship's AI, designed to decipher various languages, worked quickly to translate the distress call. Captain, the signal is Thexan, said Lieutenant Jackson as the translation appeared on the screen. Under attack. Need assistance coordinates attached. Captain Mitchell's eyes narrowed. The Thians were known to humanity, though interactions had been limited and cautious. They were a reclusive race, rarely venturing out of their own star system. For them to send a distress signal meant something catastrophic was happening. Set a course for the coordinates, she commanded. Lieutenant Stone, prepare a boarding party. We don't know what we're walking into, so be ready for anything. Aye, Captain, replied Lieutenant David Stone, a tall, muscular man with a reputation for bravery and quick thinking. He immediately gathered his team, each member a seasoned combat veteran. They checked their weapons and armor, preparing for what could be a hostile encounter. As the Vanguard altered its trajectory and accelerated towards the source of the distress signal, the tension on the bridge grew thicker. Every crew member knew that answering a stress call in unknown territory could lead to unpredictable dangers. Minutes felt like hours as the Vanguard approached the Thian vessel. Finally, the ship came into view on the main display, a large ornate craft, heavily damaged and listing to one side. Fires burned on its hull and debris floated around it, a clear sign of a fierce battle. Scan for life signs, ordered Captain Mitchell. Multiple life signs detected, Captain, reported Enan Ramirez, the ship sensor operator, but there are also numerous unidentified hostile signatures aboard. Prepare for combat, Mitchell, said Lieutenant Stone. You have a go. Bring them back alive. David nodded, leading his team to the docking bay. As they boarded the shuttle, he could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. The lives of the Thian crew depended on their success. Remember, we don't know who or what we're dealing with, David reminded his team. Stay sharp and stick together. Our primary objective is to secure the Thian crew and bring them back safely. The shuttle docked with the Thian ship with a soft thud, and the airlock hissed as it pressurized. The team donned their helmets, sealing their suits for zero-atmosphere conditions. With a final nod, David led the way as the airlock doors slid open, revealing the chaos within. The interior of the Thian ship was a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the Vanguard. The corridors were dimly lit, filled with smoke and the flickering lights of damaged systems. The walls bore the scars of battle, with scorch marks and debris scattered everywhere. Moving cautiously, the team advanced through the ship, their weapons at the ready. They encountered the first signs of life in a large chamber that appeared to be a control center. Thian bodies lay strewn about, some clearly dead, others grievously injured. A group of Thian warriors, distinctive with their tall, slender frames and intricate armor, were locked in combat with hulking insectoid creatures. Clearly the aggressors engage, David ordered, and his team sprang into action. Laser fire filled the air as the human soldiers joined the fray. Their superior training and firepower quickly turned the tide of the battle. The insectoid creatures, taken by surprise, fell one by one under the relentless assault. In the midst of the chaos, David spotted a figure who stood out from the rest. She was tall and regal with delicate iridescent wings folded against her back. Her armor was more ornate and she carried a staff that crackled with energy. Even without understanding Thexan hierarchy, David knew she had to be someone of importance. The insectoid creatures seemed to realize this too, as several of them converged on her position. With a burst of speed, David charged forward, firing his weapon and cutting down the attackers before they could reach her. One creature lunged at him, but he dodged and brought his rifle butt down on its head, crushing its skull. The woman, the alien princess, as David would later learn, looked at him with a mixture of surprise and relief. She spoke rapidly in her native tongue, her voice melodious but filled with urgency. "We need to get you out of here," David said, knowing she couldn't understand him but hoping his tone conveyed his intention. He motioned for her to follow him and she complied, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. As they made their way back to the shuttle, the team encountered more resistance, but they fought through it, protecting the princess and the remaining Thexan survivors. Finally they reached the airlock and boarded the shuttle. As the doors closed and the shuttle detached from the Talaxian vessel, David felt a surge of relief. They had managed to rescue the princess and several of her people, but the cost had been high. Back on the Vanguard, the medical team was ready. Dr. Emily Carter immediately began treating the wounded, her hands moving with practiced precision. David stayed close to the princess, who was clearly in pain but maintained a stoic expression. "Weck, take care of you," he said softly, hoping she could sense his sincerity. As the ship's AI worked on translating her language, the first coherent words from the prince came through. "Thank you for saving us." David nodded, understanding that this rescue was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. The Thexan were in grave danger, and now so were the humans who had chosen to help them. "Keep moving," David shouted over the den. His team formed a tight perimeter around the princess and the other survivors, their weapons trained on every possible entry point. The insectoid creatures, relentless in their pursuit, swarmed through the ship, their mandibles clicking ominously. One of the soldiers, Private Lee, stumbled as an enemy lunged at him. David spun around, firing a burst of energy that disintegrated the creature midair. "Thanks, Lieutenant," Lee gasped, regaining his footing. "Leighton, get out of here in one piece," David replied, his voice firm. As they neared the docking bay, the Thyan ship shuddered under another barrage of enemy fire. Panels sparked and the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the bulkheads. The urgency of their mission pressed down on David like a physical weight. Failure was not an option. "Shuttles in sight," shouted Sergeant Harris, gesturing towards the gleaming craft that would take them back to the safety of the Vanguard. David ushered the princess and the other Thyans into the shuttle first, ensuring they were secure before he and his team boarded. "Go, go, go," he commanded. The shuttle doors sealed shut and the pilot initiated takeoff. The alien ship reseated in the viewport, a blazing inferno. Surrounded by the cold dark void, David exhaled deeply, his mind racing through the events of the rescue. Princess Zara, though injured, maintained a regal composure. Her large expressive eyes met David's, conveying a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. She spoke in her native tongue, the translation device finally catching up. "Thank you, brave soldier. My people owe you a great, great debt." David nodded. "We not done yet, Princess. We'll get you to safety." As the shuttle docked with the Vanguard, a medical team awaited them, led by Dr. Emily Carter. "Get the princess to the infirmary immediately," she ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument. David helped Zara onto a stretcher. "You're in good hands now," he assured her. Dr. Emily Carter worked tirelessly to save Zara's life. The infirmary was a stark, sterile environment, a hive of activity as medical personnel moved with precision and urgency. The hum of machinery and the soft beeping of monitors created a backdrop of controlled chaos. "Prep her for surgery," Dr. Carter instructed her team. Nurses and medics sprang into action, their movements efficient and synchronized. Emily herself was a beacon of calm amidst the flurry of activity, her focus unbroken as she assessed Zara's injuries. David lingered just outside the infirmary, his mind racing with concern for the princess and her people. The battle had been intense, and the faces of the fallen Thyans haunted him. He glanced at the holographic display showing the condition of the patients. Zara's status Was critical but stable. Hours seemed to pass in mere moments as the medical team worked. Emily's hands moved deftly. Repairing wounds and stabilizing vitals. We need more plasma here, she called out. And a nurse immediately responded, handing her the necessary supplies. Despite the advanced medical technology at their disposal, Zara's condition was precarious. Her physiology was different from any species the human crew had encountered, adding complexity to the already challenging task. Emily's experience and intuition were put to the test as she navigated unfamiliar biological terrain. She's a fighter, Emily murmured more to herself than anyone else as she administered a dose of a potent regenerative serum. Come on, stay with us. Gradually the monitor showed signs of improvement. Zara's breathing steadied, and her vital signs began to stabilize. Emily allowed herself a moment of relief. Though she knew the recovery process was far from over. Outside the infirmary, Captain Mitchell approached. Davido is she asked, her voice low. Dr. Carter's doing everything she can. Zara stable for now, David replied, his expression grim. Captain Mitchell nodded. Good, we need her alive if we're to understand what happened to her ship and what's coming next. As if on cue, the ship's AI completed its translation of Zara's initial communications. A synthesized voice echoed through the corridor. The Krill. They attacked without warning. They seek the Hearthstone, an artifact of immense power. David's eyes widened. Hearthstone? What's that? Before anyone could respond, the infirmary doors opened and Dr. Carter emerged, looking exhausted. Ed but relieved. Shek, make it, she said, but she'll need time to recover. David stepped into the infirmary, approaching Zara's bedside. Her eyes fluttered open and she looked at him with a mixture of weariness and gratitude. First one, she repeated, her voice weak but determined. We must protect it. David nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. The Krill were not just any enemy, they were after something of great importance, and now it was up to the crew of the Vanguard to stand between them and the destruction they sought. Rest now, he said softly, we'll take care of everything. As Zara drifted into a healing sleep, David knew their mission had just become far more complex and dangerous. The survival of both humanity and the Thians depended on their next moves. Captain Mitchell stood at the head of the conference room table aboard the Vanguard, her eyes scanning the assembled officers and key personnel. The room was filled with tension, the gravity of their situation palpable. Holographic projections of the Thian home world Theaxia and the Krill fleet floated above the table. We've confirmed that the Krill are after an artifact called the Hearthstone. Captain Mitchell began. Princess Zara has informed us that its power is beyond our current understanding and that it must not fall into Krill hands. Lieutenant David Stone, seated near the front, leaned forward. Captain, we need to form an alliance with the Thians. They know more about the Krill and the Hearst one than we do. If we work together, we stand a better chance of stopping them. There were murmurs of agreement and skepticism around the table. Commander Jacobs, the ship's tactical officer, voiced his concern. Captain, how can we be sure the Thians will even agree to an alliance? They've been isolationist for a long time. Captain Mitchell nodded. It's a valid point, Commander, but given the circumstances we have to try our survival and theirs depends on it. The decision was made to reach out to the Thexan leadership. Princess Zara, though still recovering, agreed to act as a liaison. She provided crucial insights into Thian customs and protocols, guiding the humans on how to approach her people diplomatically. The Vanguard established a secure communication link with the Thian capital. The face of High Chancellor Aaron, an elderly Thexan with dignified features and a commanding presence, appeared on the screen. His eyes, though weary, held a spark of determination. High Chancellor Aaron. Captain Mitchell began, inclining her head respectfully. I am Captain Laura Mitchell of the human battleship Vanguard. We have rescued Princess Zara and several of your people from a Krill attack. We seek an alliance to combat this common enemy. Aaron's expression softened at the mention of Zara. Captain Mitchell, your actions have saved many lives, including that of our beloved Princess. We owe you a debt of gratitude. However, an alliance is a significant step. What assurances can you offer that this partnership will be mutually beneficial? David stepped forward, his voice steady and earnest. Chancellor, we understand your hesitation, but the Krill threat endangers all of us. United we can combine our strengths. Your knowledge and Our technology to protect both our worlds. We propose joint operations. Resource sharing and mutual defense. There was a moment of silence as Aaron considered the proposal. He glanced at Zara, who nodded weakly but resolutely. Very well, Aaron said finally. We will form an alliance together. We shall defend the Hearthstone and our people. The room erupted in a mixture of relief and determination. The alliance was a historic moment, bridging the gap between two civilizations with a common goal, with Zara as their guide. The Vanguard set course for Theaxia. The ship's engines hummed as they entered warp speed. The stars outside the viewport stretching into streaks of light. The journey was fraught with anticipation. The crew keenly aware of the looming threat. David spent much of his time with Zara learning about Thian culture and the significance of the Hearthstone. They often met in the observation deck, where the vastness of space face provided a backdrop to their conversations. Theaxia is a beautiful planet, Zara said one evening, her voice tinged with both pride and sorrow. Our cities are built in harmony with nature, and the Hearthstone has been a symbol of our unity and strength for millennia. David listened intently, his respect for Zara and her people growing with each passing day. We'll do everything we can to protect it, he assured her, but we need to understand more about the Hearthstone power. What exactly does it do? Zara's gaze turned thoughtful. The Hearthstone is an ancient relic believed to be a gift from an advanced civilization that existed long before our own. It has the ability to manipulate energy on a scale we can scarcely comprehend in the wrong hands. It could be used to unleash unimaginable destruction. Their conversations were not only informative but also deeply personal. Despite the vast differences in their backgrounds, David and Zara found common ground in their shared commitment to their people and their cause. As the Vanguard approached Theaxia, the crew prepared for the challenges ahead. The planet came into view, a stunning orb of blue and green, its surface marked by vast oceans and lush forests. But the beauty of Theaxia was marred by the signs of conflict, burning cities and scattered debris from the ongoing Krill attacks. The ship descended into the atmosphere, escorted by a fleet of Thexan fighters. The capital city, despite its recent devastation, stood resilient, its towers reaching skyward like the spires of an ancient cathedral. David and Captain Mitchell, along with a delegation of human officers, were welcomed by High Chancellor Aaron and his council. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful, the alliance now a tangible reality. Welcome to Theaxia, Aaron said, his voice carrying the weight of both hospitality and urgency. We have much to discuss and little time to prepare. The Krill will not stop until they have the Hearthstone. As they approached the Laxia, the Vanguard and its Talaxian escorts navigated through the debris field left by previous battles. The beauty of Theaxia pristine landscapes contrasted sharply with the looming threat from above. The atmosphere inside the Vanguard was electric with anticipation and unease. Stay sharp, Captain Mitchell's voice echoed through the intercom. We're entering tested space, be ready for anything. Lieutenant David Stone stood on the bridge monitoring the tactical readouts. The Thian fighters, sleek and agile, flanked the Vanguard, their pilots in constant communication with the human ship. Suddenly alarms blared and the holographic display lit up with multiple red blips. Krill warships inbound, shouted Ensign Ramirez. They're coming in fast and hard. The Krill vessels burst from the shadows of Theaxia moons, their dark menacing forms cutting through space. They opened fire immediately, and the Vanguard rocked violently as the shields absorbed the first wave of attacks. All hands, battle stations, Captain Mitchell commanded, her voice calm but urgent. Return fire and hold formation. The Vanguard's turrets swiveled and unleashed a barrage of laser fire. Thexan fighters darted between the larger ships, engaging the Krill in intense dogfights. The bridge was a flurry of activity as officers read orders and monitored the battle's progression. David coordinated with the Thian fleet, his respect for their tactical prowess growing as they executed daring maneuvers. Despite their valiant efforts, the Krill forces were relentless, their superior numbers beginning to overwhelm the defenders. Captain, we've got Krill boarding parties incoming, reported Sergeant Harris from the security station they're targeting our hangar bays. David's eyes narrowed. We can't let them get a foothold inside the ship. I'll lead a team to repel the boarders. Go. Captain Mitchell nodded. Weck, hold the line here. David sprinted to the Hangar where the first wave of Krill's soldiers had already breached the outer defenses. The hangar bay was a chaotic battlefield with humans and Thians fighting side by side against the insectoid invaders. Form up, David shouted. Rallying his troops pushed them back. Energy blasts and the clash of melee weapons filled the air. David fought with everything he had, his rifle blazing and his combat knife flashing in close quarters. The Krill were brutal and efficient, but the combined might of the human Anthian defenders began to turn the tide in the midst of the battle. David spotted a larger Krill warrior directing the assault. With a surge of adrenaline he charged forward, engaging the leader in a fierce duel. The Krill's armor was tough, but David's strikes found the weak points, and with a final decisive blow he spelled the enemy commander. With their leader defeated, the remaining Krill faltered. Pressed the advantage, David urged. Drive them out. The defenders surged forward, pushing the Krill back to their boarding ships. As the last of the invaders retreated, the hangar erupted in cheers. David took a moment to catch his breath, his mind already on the next phase of the battle. Upon reaching Thiaxia, the vanguard found the planet in ruins, with the last remnants of the Thian resistance holding out in the capital city. The devastation was heartbreaking. Once beautiful cities now lay in smoldering ruins, and the skies were filled with the acrid smoke of war. Captain Mitchell addressed the crew. We've made it to Thiaxia, but the fight is far from over. This is their last stand, and it's our job to ensure it's not their final one. David, now a respected figure among both human and Thian soldiers, prepared for the ground assault. Princess Zara, though still recovering, insisted on joining the Strategic Command Center. Her presence was a beacon of hope for her people. Lieutenant Stone, Zara said, her voice strong despite her injuries. We need to secure the Hearst One before the Krill can reach it. Its power must not be used against us. David nodded. Wek, do whatever it takes, Princess. We won't let them win. The combined forces of humans and Thians mobilized for the battle to reclaim the capital. The plan was to divide their forces. One group would defend the city and the other would secure the Hearst One location deep within the royal palace. David led the strike team heading for the palace. The city streets were a war zone with pockets of fierce resistance against the encroaching Krill forces. Buildings crumbled under the bombardment, and the air was thick with the sounds of battle. Stay close and keep moving, David shouted over the den. His team navigated through the maze of ruined structures, encountering Krill squads at every turn. Each engagement was brutal and intense, but the determination of the defenders never wavered. As they neared the palace, the resistance stiffened. The Krill seemed to understand the importance of this location and had fortified their positions. David's team fought through barricades and entrenched enemy lines, their progress slow but relentless. Finally they reached the palace gates, where a fierce battle was already underway. Thexan warriors, driven by the desperate need to protect their heritage, clashed with the Krill in a ferocious melee. David's team joined the fray, their firepower tipping the scales inside the palace. The fight continued. Ornate halls and sacred chambers became battlefields, the beauty of the architecture marred by the violence of war. David led his team with unwavering resolve, every step taking them closer to the Hearthstone. They reached the inner sanctum, a grand chamber where the Hearthstone rested on an elaborate pedestal, its glow filling the room with an ethereal light. But they were not alone. The Krill had anticipated their move, and a large force awaited them. Hold the line, David commanded. We can't let them take the Hearthstone. The ensuing battle was the fiercest yet. The Krill, knowing the importance of the Hearthstone, fought with a frenzied desperation. David and his team formed a protective circle around the artifact, their determination matching the Krill's ferocity. Princess Zara, arriving with reinforcements, joined David in the defense. Her presence galvanized the Talaxian warriors, their resolve hardening as they fought to protect their legacy. Together humans and Thians stood as one, their unity a testament to their shared strength. As the battle reached its climax, David found himself facing a Krill warlord, a towering figure of menace and power. The duel was intense, each combatant matching the other in skill and ferocity. With a final decisive strike, David defeated the warlord, securing the Hearthstone. The remaining Krill, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Cheers erupted from the defenders, the tide of battle finally turning in their Favor the Hearthstone was safe and with it the hope for Theaxia future David. Looked at Zara, her eyes filled with gratitude and resolve. We did it, he said. His voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Zara nodded, a fierce determination in her gaze. Yes, but we must remain vigilant. This victory is just the beginning. Together we will rebuild and ensure that the sacrifices made today were not in vain. Lieutenant Stone, Zara said, her voice resolute. Despite her exhaustion, we must retrieve the Hearthstone before the Krill discover its location. Without it they will continue their relentless pursuit, endangering both our peoples. David nodded, his determination mirrored in Zara's eyes. We'll get it, Princess. Lead the way. David assembled a small elite team for the mission. Each member was hand-picked for their skills and bravery. Among them were Sergeant Harris, known for his tactical acumen, Private Lee, whose sharp shooting had saved many lives, and a few Thaian warriors who knew the palace layout intimately. As they navigated the grand halls of the palace, the signs of recent battles were everywhere. Scorched walls, shattered statues and debris littered the floors, the once vibrant tapestries depicting battle. Stay close and keep moving, David shouted over the den. His team navigated through the maze of ruined structures, encountering Krill squads at every turn. Each engagement was brutal and intense, but the determination of the defenders never wavered. As they neared the palace, the resistance stiffened. The Krill seemed to understand the importance of this location and had fortified their positions. David's team fought through barricades and entrenched enemy lines, their progress slow but relentless. Finally they reached the palace gates, where a fierce battle was already underway. Thexan warriors, driven by the desperate need to protect their heritage, clashed with the Krill in a ferocious melee. David's team joined the fray, their firepower tipping the scales inside the palace. The fight continued. Ornate halls and sacred chambers became battlefields, the beauty of the architecture marred by the violence of war. David led his team with unwavering resolve, every step taking them closer to the Hearthstone. They reached the inner sanctum, a grand chamber where the Hearthstone rested on an elaborate pedestal, its glow filling the room with an ethereal light. But they were not alone. The Krill had anticipated their move, and a large force awaited them. Hold the line, David commanded. We can't let them take the Hearthstone. The ensuing battle was the fiercest yet. The Krill, knowing the importance of the Hearthstone, fought with a frenzied desperation. David and his team formed a protective circle around the artifact, their determination matching the Krill's ferocity. Princess Zara, arriving with reinforcements, joined David in the defense. Her presence galvanized the Talaxian warriors, their resolve hardening as they fought to protect their legacy. Together humans and Thaians stood as one, their unity a testament to their shared strength. As the battle reached its climax, David found himself facing a Krill warlord, a towering figure of menace and power. The duel was intense, each combatant matching the other in skill and ferocity. With a final decisive strike, David defeated the warlord, securing the Hearthstone. The remaining Krill, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Cheers erupted from the defenders, the tide of battle finally turning in their favor. The Hearthstone was safe and with it the hope for Theaxia future David looked at Zara, her eyes filled with gratitude and resolve. We did it, he said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Zara nodded, a fierce determination in her gaze. Yes, but we must remain vigilant. This victory is just the beginning. Together we will rebuild and ensure that the sacrifices made today were not in vain. Lieutenant Stone, Zara said, her voice resolute. Despite her exhaustion, we must retrieve the Hearthstone before the Krill discover its location. Without it they will continue their relentless pursuit, endangering both our peoples. David nodded, his determination mirrored in Zara's eyes. We'll get it, Princess. Lead the way. David assembled a small elite team for the mission. Each member was hand-picked for their skills and bravery. Among them were Sergeant Harris, known for his tactical acumen, Private Lee, whose sharp shooting had saved many lives, and a few Thaian warriors who knew the palace layout intimately. As they navigated the grand halls of the palace, the signs of recent battles were everywhere. Scorched walls, shattered statues and debris littered the floors, the once vibrant tapestries depicting First one safely in their possession. The sounds of battle faded behind them, but the sense of urgency remained. As they emerged into the daylight, they saw reinforcements arriving. Human Anthean Soldiers working together to secure the palace grounds. The sight filled David with renewed hope. We did it, Zara said. Her voice filled with relief. But the battle isn't over yet. David nodded. We need to get the Hearst One to a secure location and regroup. The Krill will come at us with everything they have as they hurried to the extraction point. David couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The betrayal they had faced was a stark reminder of the stakes involved, and the fight for Theaxia was far from over. But with the Hearst One in their possession and their alliance stronger than ever, there was hope, and for David that was enough to keep fighting. The final battle raged across the capital city as Krill forces launched their full-scale attack. The combined human and Thyan forces stood ready, their determination solidified by the successful retrieval of the Hearthstone. The city's once grand avenues were now battlegrounds with hastily constructed barricades and fortified positions. Captain Mitchell coordinated the defense from the command center aboard the Vanguard, her voice calm and authoritative over the comms. All units, hold your positions. Reinforcements are on the way. We cannot let the Krill break through. Lieutenant David Stone on the front lines relayed orders to his team. Focus fire on the heavy units. We need to break their advance. His voice was steady, but his mind raced with the knowledge that every moment counted. Princess Zara fought alongside her people, her staff crackling with energy as she unleashed devastating attacks on the Krill. Her presence inspired the Thyan warriors, their resolve hardened by her bravery. The Krill, relentless and brutal, pressed their assault with wave after wave of soldiers, their war machines towering constructs of metal and weaponry pushed through the streets, threatening to overrun the defenders. Stone, we need to take out those war machines, Sergeant Harris shouted over the den of battle. They're breaking through our lines. David nodded, signaling a squad of rocket troopers. Concentrate fire on the legs of those machines. We need to them. Explosions rocked the battlefield as the human and Thyan forces targeted the war machines' weak points. One by one the behemoths toppled, but the Krill's numbers seemed endless. Suddenly the ground trembled as a massive Krill drop ship descended, disgorging even more troops. David's heart sank at the sight. We can't let them reinforce, he muttered, his mind racing for a solution. Zara approached, her eyes filled with determination. David, we must use the Hearthstone. It's our only chance to turn the tide. David hesitated. Are you sure it's dangerous? Zara's gaze was unwavering. I am. We have no other choice. In a desperate bid to turn the tide, Zara decided to use the artifact's power, knowing it could cost her life. She led David and a small group of elite soldiers to a secure location where they could activate the Hearthstone without immediate interference from the Krill. They reached an ancient temple deep within the palace grounds, a place of great significance to the Thyans. The walls were adorned with carvings depicting the Hearthstone's history, and the air was thick with a sense of solemnity and power. Zara approached the pedestal in the center of the chamber where the Hearst One now rested. She turned to David, her expression resolute. This is where it must be done. The Hearthstone's energy will amplify here. David placed a hand on her shoulder. Zara, you don't have to do this alone. She smiled sadly. This is my duty, David, for my people, for our future. As Zara began the activation sequence, the Hearst One pulsed with increasing intensity. Its glow filled the chamber, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Outside, the battle raged on, the sounds of combat echoing through the temple. The Hearthstone's energy began to radiate outward, a visible wave of power spreading from the temple. Krill soldiers recoiled as the energy washed over them, their movements slowing, their attacks weakening. The defenders, emboldened by the artifact's power, pushed back with renewed vigor, but the strain on Zara was immense. She gritted her teeth, her body trembling as she channeled the Hearthstone's power. David could see the toll it was taking on her, and his heart ached with the knowledge of what she was sacrificing. Zara, you need to stop, David shouted, his voice filled with desperation. It's too much. She shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. I can't. This is the only way. With a final agonizing surge of energy, the Hearthstone unleashed a massive wave of power sweeping across the battlefield. Krill soldiers were thrown back, their ranks shattered, the war machines ground to a halt, their systems overloaded. The defenders cheered, their victory seemingly assured, but David's joy was tempered by the sight of Zara collapsing to the ground, the Hearst One glow fading. He rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. Zara, stay with me, he pleaded, his voice breaking. She looked up at him, Her face pale but serene. "Thank you, David," she whispered, "for everything," as her eyes closed. David felt a profound sense of loss. Zara's sacrifice had saved her people, but the cost had been devastating. He held her close, tears streaming down his face as the sounds of battle faded into a somber silence. The Krill forces, shattered by the Hearthstone's final burst of energy, retreated in disarray. The defenders, both human and Thyan, stood in stunned silence for a moment, trying to process the sudden shift from chaos to calm. The battlefield, once a cacophony of destruction, was now eerily quiet except for the crackling of distant fires and the groans of the wounded. Captain Mitchell's voice crackled over the comms. "All units report status secure the area and begin medical evacuation." Lieutenant David Stone gently laid Princess Zara's body down. His heart heavy with grief, he rose and surveyed the battlefield, and noting the countless injured and fallen, the price of their victory was staggering. "Lieutenant Stone," Captain Mitchell's voice came through again, softer this time, "we need to regroup and begin repairs. The Krill may have retreated, but they are not defeated. We have to be ready for their return." David nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Understood, Captain. We'll take it from here." He began coordinating the evacuation of the wounded, directing medics and soldiers to assist those in need. The Thyans, inspired by Zara's sacrifice, worked tirelessly alongside their human allies. The bond forged in the crucible of battle was now unbreakable. Sergeant Harris approached David, his face a mix of exhaustion and respect. "She gave everything for her people," he said quietly, glancing at Zara. "Still form." "She did," David replied, his voice thick with emotion, "and we need to honor her by ensuring her sacrifice wasn't in vain." As the cleanup continued, High Chancellor Arian arrived with a contingent of Thyan leaders. His face was etched with sorrow, but his eyes held a fierce determination. "Lieutenant Stone, Captain Mitchell," he said, addressing them both through the comms, "you have our deepest gratitude. Princess Zara's bravery and your unyielding building support have given us a chance to rebuild." Captain Mitchell responded from the command center, her tone resolute. "We will stand with you, Chancellor. Together we will rebuild and defend against any future threats."